Okay, working on getting everything back together up on the front. So I got all the accessory drive belts back on. They're a pain in the butt just to figure out the routing, especially for the one that goes over to the power steering pump side here. And I got the thermostat housing on, the T up to the neck on the engine here, the upper radiator hose, lower radiator hose. There's a little adapter in here that adapts it from this radiator hose size down to the size for the radiator. So I got all that in. Probably hook up my ground strap again. I think the next thing I'm going to do actually is work on getting, I got a box over here with some power steering parts, or parts that I got for the power steering system, the Hydro Boost system, and I got a box there with the Modular Motorsports Racing oil filter relocation kit. Maybe I'll work on getting that stuff on there, the power steering stuff, kind of get stuff done up on the front side of the engine here and go from there. I have all of the oil filter relocation kit laid out here. So I got a bunch of fittings, hose, the adapter that the oil filter goes onto, the little adapter that goes in there. I might actually use this one off of here instead, since it's got a nice little hex in it. And then this that goes on the engine block. Well, then I was looking at where the oil pressure sensor could go in, and it pops in here, but then this runs up against the inside of the timing cover here. So I won't be able to use it in that spot, so I'll have to put it in this other spot here that's out with the oil filter. But I'll need to get a plug to go in there. I don't think I have one here, so I'll have to get that, and then get this sealed back up again and put that oil pressure sensor in there, and then work on getting all this, figure out where I want it on the engine or in the engine bay. But I'll have to remember I got all my power steering stuff that's going to go in here. I don't know where I'll put the reservoir, but maybe I could mount it right here or somewhere along here. Or maybe I could even mount it off the bottom of this frame rail. But I want to figure out where I'm going to have my air filter too. So got some really precious real estate here to try to figure out where I want to put this. Alright, so I'm out here messing around again with the Mustang tonight. I finally got all my parts here so you can see. I got the oil filter relocation kit, the MMR kit. So I got that mounted up to the engine with the fittings that go in that and the elbows and everything. So I'm trying to figure out where I want to put everything. So here's the adapter where the oil filter goes on. So I'm trying to figure out where exactly to put this. And I'm thinking I'll probably mount it probably under this frame rail, kind of at an angle is what I'm thinking. So I did slop the wheel back on here just to see how much clearance I have, and I noticed when I go full lock with this thing, that wheel's going to hit that anti-sway bar there. But I don't have the rotor on there either, so that'll bump it out a little bit. So maybe that'll make the difference for being able to go full lock with it with these wheels on it. But we'll find out. If I can't go full lock, it's not the end of the world. I'll just have to figure that out. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out where exactly I want to mount this bracket. I even said to Owen over here, I said maybe I should just mount this oil filter relocation kit like right here. Be awful simple. but then you deal with a mess every time you change the oil filter, of course. So it wouldn't be the neatest installation in the world. Alright, so a little update as I get started for the day today. Had some issues going on here at home, so I'm getting an awful late start on a Saturday on this, but I decided to hold off on the end links for the sway bar here until I can get this car on the ground, just to make sure that I have everything kind of set right there. So for the oil filter, you can see right up in here, I got the ends that are coming off of that plate that's on the side of the engine block. And what I think I'm going to do is mount this guy here so that the end of the ports here for the hoses will be kind of right up above the sway bar here. I don't know if I got a good angle there, but I thought I'd mount a, I got it turned the wrong way. So there we go. That's probably more like it. So I think I got enough room to kind of squeeze hoses between the power steering pump and the sway bar and up to the bracket on the engine there. Then I'm going to build a bracket that mounts kind of to the bottom of this frame rail. So I got some old angle iron here from an old chisel plow. So the farm boy in me is going to use some old farm equipment and probably cut off this bracket here, mount this bracket to the side of the frame rail, and then use another piece to kind of build something that kind of hangs down off kind of at an angle and twist it just the right way so that we can mount this guy down here and sneak those hoses through. And those hoses should end up being pretty short then. I'm thinking kind of maybe around a footish, maybe a little more than a foot, maybe a little less than a foot. And then you got the sensor here for the oil pressure sensor so that I can keep it away from the headers and stuff there. So I figure that might be an extra little bonus for having the oil centery oil unit out there. And I got to remember to get a plug for up in that thing where you could have put the oil pressure sensor. I thought I'd show this before I show you my messy workbench here. Anyway, this is the bracket that I made, so this will bolt to the bottom of the frame rail. This will be hanging down underneath the car. So, and then the remote oil filter will mount up to that bracket there. So I just got it tack welded into place right now. I already did one iteration of it, and I didn't like how it was angled underneath the car. It looked like it was angled too much towards the power steering pump. So I undid it, marked a few things up, took the flap disc to it, knocked this off, and ground a little more material off. I'm gonna just knock the rest of this paint off here. There's a little paint lift on the backside here, but I'm not too concerned about it by the time I get a weld all the way around. But anyways, just thought I'd show that. And me and the shop supervisor here will get it kind of mocked up under, the car there and show you how it looks. Alright, I was looking at this one more time. I got this all up in place, tack welded. Just use a clamp to clamp it to the frame rail just to see how everything looks here. I think this will be fine for screwing off the oil filter. I think it's going to be out of the way enough for the wheel and the tire. Well, should be. Maybe I'll have to trim this edge off here. Is what I'll do. But I want it angled up just a tick more. And I could always move this whole thing back too. But if I move it back, then I think it'll be aimed right. Maybe that's all I need to do, just move it, well, back as in away from the engine towards the front of the car. So maybe I'll take a quick look at that and see how that looks before I knock this off and change anything or weld it up or whatever. Alright, so I finally got this, well, it's temporarily in place. I'm going to drill some holes in here and probably put some nutserts in the frame rails. And I got a tool coming for that and should be here tomorrow. But other than that, I think it's looking pretty good. I want to make sure I have the nutserts in, this all bolted up in place. I've redone this 2 or 3 times now and kind of tweaked it and ground some more off and changed the angle of it a little bit. I'm pretty happy with how it's looking right now. It looks like it's aimed up enough that it'll clear the sway bar. It's angled in enough that it'll clear the bracket. I think should be pretty good, but just from laying on the floor it looked like it was pretty good that it'll clear there, and it'll clear this part of the power steering pump. I'm not going to chop the hoses for the Hydro Boost, or I'm sorry, not the Hydro Boost, but for the remote oil filter until I have this all permanently mounted in place, and I think it looks good with all the nutserts and everything bolted up in place. Figure I'll run 2 nutserts up through the bottom, 2 through the side to really lock that bracket in. Then get some bolts in here, weld the nut on the back side. Oh, I might still lop this corner off or round it off or something here on that angle iron too. So a little more work, but making good progress. Got these drilled out, got some nutserts in there so I can put my little bracket up there that holds the oil filter up in place. So making progress. Alright, so I got primer all on this bracket, my nutserts in, everything's bolted up, pretty secure now. Got the oil filter on, dropped a little bit of oil on there just to get it primed a little bit. Time to start getting things plumbed now. The oil filter plumbed to the engine block, getting kind of down to the nitpicky stuff. Alright guys, so I was working on lines for the remote oil filter here, so you can see I got one line done and up in place. It like just barely snakes around between the sway bar and the power steering pump. I think it's looking pretty good there. You can kind of see it there. But I didn't record any of that. I did like the directions here from this Evil Energy setup. It says like you're supposed to put a here. So you're supposed to put a piece of tape or something to mark here to show, like as you tighten this down to the fitting, to this nipple that's inside here, that this line doesn't push out. But I just thought this was funny on this Evil Energy one. I did take the time to kind of skim through it. And then it says step 6. So you have, after you check that mark, and if that hose backs out more than 1/16 of an inch out of the socket, as you assembled it, curse and return to step 3. But I thought that was pretty funny. They kind of have some fun instructions here for this Evil Energy line, but that's the stuff for the power steering that I got. Here's the one for the oil. So this one goes from, I think, from the in on the engine to the out on the oil filter there. I'll double check. Yeah, that says out. And then it says in. Yep, on there. So I'll get this hose up in place, get it tightened down. I got everything else on here for this, for the out to in, all in place and torqued down. So I'm making progress, loving it. Gonna get this thing on the road. All right, so I got one hose back in here, took the one end apart. So if anyone hasn't done any of this before, basically cut the end off here, and I used just a die grinder cut off wheel. Put tape around there to kind of keep it from fraying. Pull the tape off, Then you chuck this up in a soft vise, and I'm just using a rag in a vise, and turn it counterclockwise into there, and then pop that in. And then once you have that done, you pop this piece on there and try to screw this on as much as you can by hand, and then tighten it up the rest of the way. And I put tape around here as I did that, just to make sure that this tube didn't push back out of the fitting here, and which I had pretty good luck with that. It didn't seem to budge. So I did some measuring. I'm going to make a tube that's about 1 inch longer than this, and then pop it back in here, and then it should be good to go in the car. So I thought I'd show this just to show that this stuff doesn't happen instantly on YouTube, where all of a sudden you just have everything in place. So I took the old hose out, measured, and cut a new one about 1 inch longer. And now I don't like this because it's got like all this extra bend in here. So I think I'm going to try taking, oh, maybe 1/2 inch out and try that. And then if worse comes to worse, I'll take like another 1/4 inch out or something, or maybe I'll kind of split the difference between 1/2 and 3/4. But yeah, I just don't like how this is all kinked up now. It's not bad, but I could probably run with it, but I'm too picky. So I'm going to try to take a little length out of here, just so that it doesn't have as much bend and as much gap between the two hoses here. So hopefully you can see all this on camera. Maybe that's a little better. Well, you can see it's just got a big kink in it right up here. Well, not a big kink, but more of a bend than I want. I want to get a little bit of a more of a straight shot there and have not so much space between both of those lines. So pulling it back off, I'll take one end off and cut it 1/2 inch shorter or so. Try again. Finally got the oil filter all plumbed in. Lines looking the way I want them. This one I almost thought I could go a little shorter, but I think if I did that, I'd be getting into that predicament I was in before, where they were kind of fighting with each other. So I'm feeling pretty good with it. I got everything torqued down. The one thing I'm concerned about here is after I did so much fidgeting around, I originally cut this, so then I went with 1 inch longer, and then I cut it down 1/2 inch. Still looked too long, so I took about another, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch off. But now it kind of seems to be a little sloppy here at this joint, so I'm hoping that's okay. The other one looks a little bit, but I think I just messed around with it so many times. So I guess if worse comes to worse, I'll have to order a new elbow here to replace that. But I think it's good to go now. So I'm going to start working, cross that off the list, and start working on the Hydro Boost plumbing.